All right, let's talk some Niners on this January 1st. You're watching the 49ers Report by Chat Sports. Chase Senior hanging out here with you. Thanks for clicking on this video, and I hope everybody out there is having a fantastic start to your 2025. If you're ready to have a great year, I want you to hit that thumbs up icon, like the video. Let's have a great year together. Hope everybody was safe last night, thinking about all of the people in New Orleans, an awful situation there. But for everybody else, hope you had a great night last night, and your 2025 is off to an awesome start. As for what we're getting into, a lot of Niners news items I want to touch on here tonight. The San Francisco 49ers will have a new starting quarterback on Sunday against the Arizona Cardinals. And why didn't Kyle Shanahan start this quarterback against the Green Bay Packers earlier this year when the Niners season was still alive, when he was the better player compared to the player who got the start when Brock Purdy was out of that game? I have some thoughts on that. Niners owner Jed York saying that definitively Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch will return next season, and a 49ers rookie broke out on Monday Night Football. His performance deserves recognition because it turned some heads, it opened up some eyes, but what took so long in order for that to happen? Let's get into it all. Kyle Shanahan announcing today on this January 1st that Joshua Dobbs is going to start over the injured Brock Purdy on Sunday in Week 18 against the Arizona Cardinals. Purdy going to miss this game after taking that helmet to his surgically repaired elbow, left the game, felt as though it was on fire. That's what he said after the game following that Monday night defeat against Detroit. Tried to throw a couple of warm-up passes, and his arm wasn't feeling good. And so he underwent an MRI. The UCL is okay, just has a bruise in there, hit his funny bone, but it's bad enough to the point where Purdy is not going to be able to play in this game against Arizona. It's a bummer because I want to continue to evaluate him and scout him. There's a big decision coming up this offseason. Will the Niners give him a contract extension? How much will they pay Brock Purdy? He has played some really good football in his Niners career since taking over in 2022, where he was elite at the end of the 2022 season, didn't lose up until the NFC Championship game, and he got hurt early in that ball game, so the loss isn't on him. And then last year in 2023, one of the top quarterbacks in the league, top 5 in MVP voting, so efficient and really fantastic with the way that he was able to play point guard for Kyle Shanahan's offense. This year, moving parts, injuries, holdouts, tragic situations happening with players on this Niners roster, not being able to close out games, this Niners coaching staff not doing a good enough job. So many things factored into why Purdy's numbers slipped a little bit, including the fact that this Niners offensive line is a joke, and they need to rebuild the trenches, offensive line, defensive line, this offseason. But still, when you pay a quarterback $50 to $60 million, you want to see, are they going to lift others up, or do they need to be guided and lifted? This year, Purdy has done more of the element of not being able to lift up his teammates and not being able to have San Francisco survive some of these really difficult situations that have transpired all throughout this year. And he himself, it's not like he's played great football. So to not be able to evaluate him in this game, it's a bummer. Joshua Dobbs is going to get the start, and I said this when Dobbs replaced Purdy at the end of the game on Monday. Now Dobbs is playing, and what I meant by that was this. The Niners season was alive after they lost that Seahawks game, and they traveled to Green Bay, Wisconsin to take on the Packers, a really good team, talent everywhere, playoff team. And the Niners and Kyle Shanahan decided to start Brandon Allen instead of Brock Purdy because he was dealing with that shoulder injury at the time. And Brandon Allen is the lesser quarterback as compared to Joshua Dobbs. Dobbs has a more live arm, stronger arm, he's more athletic, he's more elusive, he's more dynamic, he's a better runner behind a bad offensive line. He is the better player. And oh yeah, he has more experience than Brandon Allen. Yet Shanahan went with Allen because he's been with the system last year and this year instead of Dobbs, who, by the way, studied aerospace engineering at Tennessee and could be an astronaut if he wanted to. He's an extremely smart dude, and we've seen him pick up playbooks very quickly in the past. So you don't start Dobbs when your season was still alive, but you start Dobbs now in Week 18 when you're out of the playoffs and Arizona is out of the playoffs. It's pretty frustrating. Now for Dobbs, good opportunity here. An audition for him for 2025 with the Niners, if he even wants to come back. I imagine that when he signed that deal with San Francisco, he looked at Kyle Shanahan, how Brock Purdy had developed, joining a Super Bowl contender. He's going to be able to beat out Brandon Allen in the backup quarterback job, right? And some people will say, Allen played better in practice. Oh, yeah? Well, in the preseason, Dobbs was better in the preseason games. So I don't want to hear that. So is Dobbs like, did I just waste my time this year? I thought I was going to be the backup. I could have had 2 starts at this point under my belt. Instead, I'm only getting 1. And he tweeted out after the game on Monday, don't even need a warm-up. Played minimal snaps, but looked pretty damn good. So an audition for him, if he wants to return to the Niners, he can also look at San Francisco and say, look at what they did with Sam Darnold. It's also an audition for him to potentially be a backup quarterback for other teams. And I will say, for the Niners in particular, backup quarterback, a big position for this team going into next year, given that Purdy has dealt with now an elbow surgery, a shoulder injury earlier this year, and has to sit out this game because of an elbow injury. Next up here on the show, Jed York says definitively that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch will be back in 2025. He said this to Tim Kawakami, and it was an exchange that went like this. York told Kawakami, longtime Bay Area sports writer, they're not going anywhere. And then when Kawakami asked if that comment was on the record, York said, quote, you can write that for sure. They're not going anywhere. I think at the end of the day, this is the best decision. I know a lot of people are fed up with Kyle Shanahan. Not a lot of people are fed up with John Lynch, although I think the Niners' roster depth has been exposed this year. And I can see why you've been frustrated with Shanahan. Mismanaging the game, blowing leads, not being able to come back in ball games. You watch that Lions game early on, and you're like, where has this creativity, play designing, and play calling been all year? Had the same thought when the Niners beat the brakes off the Chicago Bears. They looked awesome. But outside of that, it's been a pretty maddening season for Kyle Shanahan, but he's still one of the best coaches in the league. Multiple things can be true at the same time. They need to prioritize and emphasize offensive line more. I think that can help Shanahan be able to close games out and wear opponents down throughout the course of a ball game. Shanahan can make some adjustments, look himself in the mirror, and change if he's actually going to do that. Sometimes he's a little bit too stubborn. But look, the point here is he's one of the top coaches in the entire NFL. And it is very rare to have a run like the Niners just embarked on. Big reason for that, Kyle Shanahan. He has say in building the roster. That's been one of the most talented rosters in the NFL. And last year they had the number 1 overall offense in the National Football League. 4 NFC title games and 2 Super Bowl appearances in 5 years. It's a great run. If he wins a Super Bowl, and in my opinion, when he wins a Super Bowl, he's going to be looked at as one of the best offensive minds in the history of football. Yeah, he needs to do a better job of coming back in games. Yeah, he does need to do a better job of closing games out. He's lost a bunch of games up by 8+ points. They're all problematic trends, but he's also still a damn good coach. And what's the alternative? Guy like Ben Johnson? That'd be cool. Could you get him? Not guaranteed. And so, yeah, I think you run it back with Lynch and Shanahan in 2025. They've had so much success together since tearing this organization down to the studs when they were a disaster and building them into a Super Bowl contender year in, year out. So I agree with Jed York. Shanahan and Lynch should be back. As for Ricky Pearsall, that performance was really impressive against Detroit. And in the past 6 weeks, he had caught 6 passes. He was an afterthought in the offense. And then Monday night comes around. Ricky Pearsall's running wild. He's making plays. He has some juice. He's making dudes miss. He has some giddy-up speed. He's trying to hurdle defenders. He's catching a touchdown pass with Brian Branch on his back. Very impressive performance. 8 catches, 141 yards, and a touchdown. Really a breakout game for him. What took so long? What took so long? You're utilizing him like that in Week 17 when you could have done it perhaps in the previous weeks. Now, you could talk about Pearsall coming back off the gunshot wound. It's a thing. Him not mastering this offense. It's a thing. And while I've complimented Shanahan on this show just moments ago, as recently as that, sometimes he can be hard on rookies, and sometimes he doesn't give them a lot of leeway. Also, Pearsall deserves some blame for, against Miami, having 2 illegal formation penalties called on him on the same drive. Unacceptable. But the ability looks to be there, and that is what a first-round pick looks like. What took so long? This is what Shanahan said. That's the hardest thing with wide receivers in this day and age, that everyone's judged off of their stats. They can tell a lot sometimes, but that's just when they get the ball or not, and that's not always based off of what they do. That's based off of circumstances that happen with the other 21 players on the field. So, coach speak there, it hurts. Because there's a lot. You can really play a good game and have no numbers, and there's nothing that you did wrong about it, but people act like you didn't because you need to see those numbers from guys when they touch the ball. So I was happy that he got more opportunities, that it worked out that way, and when he did, he came through with those opportunities, showed the stuff that we liked about him so that everyone could see it. Yeah, we could have seen this a little bit earlier. I mean, even if Pearsall can't get open, how about a jet sweep? How about a reverse? How about a bubble screen? How about finding ways to get the ball in the hands of your playmakers? Because you have to determine, is he going to be a guy for you next year? And if he is, maybe you don't draft or sign a wide receiver. If he isn't, that becomes a big need. So good job by Ricky Pearsall for popping off in that game. Happy New Year, everybody. Hope you had a great night. You had a great day. Hope you enjoyed the show. And if you haven't subscribed, do so right now.